Season's greetings, everyone. Good to visit with you for a few minutes again. Well, as many of you know, I have been combating the false gospel according to easy believism all year long. I've actually been doing it a lot longer than that on different platforms, but here on YouTube, all year long, basically, since I started making videos back in April. And I started making them because I was getting banned from all the other channels. Sometimes they let me type in a couple of comments and then they put me in timeout or just block me altogether. I'm talking about the false teachers like Praise the I Am, Kevin's biblical discussions, the layman's seminary, Graham Gould, all these unordained, unlettered, unregenerate, unrepentant, unteachable YouTube grifting quacks that we see out here every night, trying to push the false gospel according to personal sacrifice-free, easy believism. This ear-tickling gospel that says all you got to do is just believe the same thing that the guards of the empty tomb believed, and you're going to heaven. Doesn't matter what you did before, after, or you're going to heaven because you believe. And their favorite go-to verse is Romans 4:3. Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. That's the way the Protestants mistranslated that verse, Romans 4:3. Abraham believed God. Now, this is Paul quoting from Genesis 15:6. And the original Hebrew, it's probably better translated as Abraham was faithful to God, and God accredited his faithfulness as righteousness. That's the better translation. And you can look up the original Hebrew verb for that, H539, and you'll see that verb gets translated as trustworthy, loyal, obedient in different places in the Old Testament. So, but according to the easy believers, no, Abraham was the original easy believist. He believed something and God made him righteous because he believed. That's all he had to do was just believe. That's what they're telling you. All you have to do is just believe the same thing that the guards of the empty tomb believe. If you believe that, doesn't matter what you do. You can be a practicing homosexual according to the layman's seminary. You're going to heaven because you believe. Now, isn't that a wonderful gospel? Let me tell you something. If that wasn't already out there, the devil would be promoting it tonight, thinking it up, giving it to somebody. But that's what they're out here promoting every night. So since I can't really comment on their pages anymore, they've seen to it that, people like me aren't allowed to write in their comment section, join their streams, participate at all, because, it's kind of embarrassing to have somebody like me come on your stream and prove to everyone that you don't know what you're talking about. So they've just, for convenience, they banned me. But I thought I'd put this one out here really quick and ask them this question, which I asked them on their own pages during their own streams, but I never get an answer. My question again, praise the I Am. What exactly did Abraham believe that so impressed God that God accredited that belief as righteousness? What exactly did Abraham believe? It certainly could not have been God's promise about his progeny. Abraham apparently did not believe that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky, because we read in Genesis chapter 12, he lied to Pharaoh and told him that his wife was actually his sister, because if Pharaoh thought this was his wife, they would kill him to have his wife. So he told Pharaoh No, it's not my wife, it's my sister. And Pharaoh found out the truth, got angry about it, and threw him out. But apparently, Abraham didn't believe God that, you know, his progeny would be so numerous because he didn't trust God to protect him from Pharaoh. And then in Genesis chapter 16, we read that Abraham was talked into having a child by his wife's slave, Hagar. So once again, if he believed God about his descendants being numerous as the sand on the seashore, why would he think that he needed to have an heir by his wife's Egyptian slave? Didn't he believe God? You know what? I don't think he did believe. But whether he believed or not, he was faithful to God. He went where God told him to go, when he was told to go. He did what God told him to do, including sacrificing his own son, Isaac. So the best translation of Genesis 15:6 and also Romans 4:3, and the other places it appears in James chapter 2 and Genesis chapter 3, or I'm sorry, Galatians chapter 3, I believe it is, where you see Genesis 15:6 being quoted in the New Testament by James and by Paul. And it's consistently mistranslated, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. It should be, Abraham was faithful to God, and God credited that to him as righteousness. But again, mine is a minority voice. We have English Bibles that were translated by Protestants who wanted to take works out of the equation for salvation. So if you make it sound like Abraham was loyal, was faithful, actually was demonstrated his allegiance to God, then you're throwing works into the mix. And we can't have that. So let's translate that verb, that Hebrew verb H539. Let's translate that Abraham believed. Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, but it works better than was faithful, because was faithful involves human effort. And we can't have that. No, it's all about belief. So Abraham, we have to make him the original easy believers. And that's what they did with the mistranslation, which they've been running with to this very day, as you see on YouTube most nights. But my question for my easy believers friends, once again, what exactly did Abraham believe that made him righteous? Tell us. It certainly wasn't about the number of offspring he was going to have. We see that from Genesis 12, Genesis 16. God apparently was not trusted by Abraham to save his life and to produce heirs with him and his aging wife. So what did Abraham believe? Tell us. Tell us. And tell us how that jives with Genesis 26, verses 4 and 5, where it says very explicitly, Abraham was considered righteous because he kept God's statutes, kept his laws, obeyed his voice. Genesis 26, verses 4 and 5 make it very clear why Abraham was considered righteous. It had nothing to do with his mental activities either. But one more question on the way out. If you can come up with some reasonably plausible thing that Abraham believed that made him righteous, if you can come up with some kind of a story for us, if you can tell us what exactly it was Abraham believed that so impressed God, I want you to answer me this too. Why does God consider gullibility a virtue? Why is credulity a virtue that God esteems? Now, I can understand why God would esteem faithfulness to him, especially when it involves personal risk and personal sacrifice. I can understand why God would consider somebody who is loyal to him at great personal risk and sacrifice. I could see why God would credit such a person with righteousness. But for the life of me, I can't figure out why God thinks someone who is easily convinced, someone who simply believes what they're told, why God would consider that to be a virtuous person. Does God really esteem the simple-minded? Answer us, easy believers. Praise the I am. What's the answer to that? How about you, Kelvy Ko, Fuego Savvy, and some of you other YouTube preaching quacks out there? Tell us exactly why God esteems credulity, gullibility. Why is that a virtue? And faithfulness is simply of no account to him. God could not care less about your faithfulness. The only thing he cares about is your gullibility. That's your gospel. Explain it to us. Shouldn't be hard. You're saying Abraham was credited with righteousness because he was gullible, not because he was faithful, not because he offered Isaac on the altar to God. No, simply because he believed things. Well, what exactly did he believe? Tell us. Okay, well, I'm not expecting many answers. I imagine, if you try and ask these questions on their pages, you will be blocked too. Don't bother. Recognize them for what they are: false teaching quacks. Abraham was credited with righteousness because he was faithful to God, not because he believed everything. We all have our doubts, but he put aside his doubts and remained faithful. That's why he was credited with righteousness. Paul uses him as an example, not of gullibility, but of faithfulness. And Paul, in the chapter before, Romans 3:26, he says explicitly, God is justifying those with the faithfulness of Jesus Christ. And he's not talking about Jesus's gullibility. He's talking about his fidelity. All right, I will stop here. Look forward to your comments. Here, I don't have to censor them. Good night, everyone.